Put your hand on it. Now say, talk to me.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another Back Lot Banter movie review. My name is Tucker Hazel. I today am joined by my handy dandy co-host Tanner Dykstra, and today we're here to talk about the latest A24 horror movie. Tanner, say it. What's the name?
Talk to me.
Yeah, he likes to say it in an Australian accent.
Talk to me.
But if you are interested in talking to us about Talk to Me, you should talk to us in our Discord, which is in the description, and talk to others in the comments, which are down there below, and subscribe. I can't really draw a parallel to that. Just subscribe and ring the bell and like and all that. Like,
yeah.
Talk to subscribe. It doesn't really
Doesn't
make
work.
sense.
Doesn't work.
I won't say that. Don't worry. Tanner,
Okay.
we have seen Talk to Me. I think a movie that we were both pretty interested in out of
Yeah.
A24 being on a pretty good streak with their horror movies. And I'm going to go on a limb and say this continues that streak. I enjoyed Talk to Me, but I want to hear your thoughts.
Tucker, I also enjoyed Talk to Me. It was much hyped for me because basically every time I saw a major account on Twitter tweeting about it, it was always the highest rated horror film of 2023, Talk to Me.
Yeah.
And it lives up to that. It is really quite good, I think, especially in a year where I don't think we've gotten a whole lot of great horror movies.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this one. I think all the performances are good. I like a lot of its conceit. I just like that this concept of like this possessed hand that lets you speak to the dead. It's just a cool idea, and it's executed very well in a horror debut by two guys who, much like the Daniels duo, have moved over from creating YouTube content into now major film directing. So, great stuff.
Yeah, no, it is a really impressive first foray into horror from people that I don't really have done too much straight horror before. I've never seen their YouTube videos. The Filippo brothers, Michael and Danny,
RackaRacka.
collectively known as RackaRacka, who have also, I believe, been giving the go ahead to make the Street Fighter movie.
They're given the keys to the Street Fighter IP.
That's gonna be really interesting to see how that turns out. But these guys really knocked it out of the park in terms of a horror movie, and really having shocking imagery, really nice tension, great character work. I thought this was a really fantastic movie. I think there's a tiny bit that's holding it back from being phenomenal for me, but I mean, come on. For a first foray into making not only horror movie, but a feature horror movie, this is really impressive, and I think that also extends to almost the entire cast, who I'd never heard of before. Of course, I'm not particularly versed in Australian movies, period, but just looking at the Letterboxd profiles for each of these actors, they haven't really done too much, but all of them knocking it out of the park. And I think I agree with you when you say that it's the conceit that really gets me in the door, and frankly, it's also the conceit that sells this movie as being something distinct. It sounds like something you might have seen before. You're like, oh, okay, a bunch of kids partying, horror stuff, possessions, but I think that its themes of drug abuse and peer pressure and just general teen party society, combining that with horror gives us a totally distinct flavor that I really, really loved.
Yeah, no, it is interesting because there is an element of tropiness to this movie, I think, but it's all put through this lens and this conceit that I really enjoy. Yeah. Where we open on a like a high school party gone wrong with a killer. Essentially, we have our main characters running over an animal on the way home. Oh yeah, but. Yeah, I mean, there is an element of tropiness to it, but there's just something about that I'm like, I don't care. Tropes exist for a reason, and it's because those beats work a lot of the time. Yeah. And they certainly do work here. And Tucker, let's get into a bit of the specifics, because you said it. Mia is our main character here, who, in classic modern horror fashion, is sort of haunted by the trauma of losing someone close to her. In this case, her mom, overdosed on sleeping pills. And she is sort of confronted with this prospect of communing with the dead with the Talk to Me hand, and she becomes obsessed with it. And I just love this performance from Sophie Wilde, who is really great in selling this character who isn't like a good person, really.
Yeah.
Like, even from the word go, she's not, like, super... She's creating these really awkward scenarios with her friends. Her friend is dating her ex-boyfriend, so we have that sort of, like, interpersonal conflict going.
Yeah.
And she clearly is still interested in this guy, and she's really, like, inserting herself into this family dynamic of her best friend and ignoring outright her dad, who is very clearly struggling with depression after her mom's passing. And she's great. I mean, she's fantastic. And then you have the whole element of her becoming obsessed with communing with the dead.
Yeah, and Sophie Wilde's performance is why this movie works as well as it does. I think that this is one of my favorite performances of the year. I think it's one of the most impressive horror performances, especially from a younger actor, but also a newer actor. Just emotion and smiles and fear and crying. Like, this movie runs the gamut of emotions.
Yeah.
You'll go from one of the most fun and upbeat party sequences I've seen in a long time in a nice montage to one of the most horrifying horror sequences I've seen in a long time. And this movie is able to balance those tones surprisingly well, and it's because not only our main character, but our supporting cast is also really, really well done. I think the standouts for me are Joe Bird as Riley, who goes through a lot of shit in this movie, but really, really sells it. And then even just the smaller performances like Otis Donji as Daniel and Alexandra Jensen as Jade. I think that they do a really great job at fleshing out the awkwardness of teen communication and not really being comfortable with the party dynamic, but having the peer pressure to feel like you need to fit in these scenarios, and mixing that stuff that you and I remember because we were in college and we were in high school, and we can relate to this sort of this high school and teen miscommunication and party dynamic. But mixing that with horror and the themes of comparing being possessed to, like, drug use, I think is really interesting, and not necessarily something I can point to for horror having done before. The way that Talk to Me with this hand and being able to be possessed temporarily and, like, by your own volition be possessed temporarily, and comparing that to the high that people get from using drugs and the peer pressure to just do it once, just do it a little bit. It's going to be fun. It's going to be off this party thing. People are filming the possessions. That's not something I've ever seen in a horror movie before, and it feels so distinct because of that.
I joke when we walked out of the theater that we're returning to the socially conservative themes of 80s horror, where we are punching our characters for partying, having sex, things of that nature. And I mean, there is this, like, really strong connection between drug use, especially with Mia's mom overdosing as sort of like the crux of her whole character conflict. And just multiple mentions of it from everyone, especially Riley and I forget the other Jade. Yeah. Riley and Jade's mom is always talking about, "Oh, Mia, I know that you use drugs. I know that you give Riley anything. You've done stuff in the past." There is that really strong connection there, alongside the connection of the monster is trauma as well, like I alluded to earlier. Yeah. But it is that added twist of it. And going along with that, I dig those party scenes that you mentioned, Tucker. A really fun, like, party montage of just these, like, 5 or 6 friends just sitting around, just taking turns getting possessed, essentially. Yeah. Which is great acting from them as well.
It's just amazing.
Just like also the effect of, like, their pupils growing to, like, their entire eyes are black.
Not only that, but I think all the filmmaking works to making these possession moments, which are numerous throughout the film, feel very impactful, even though you're seeing them quite a few times, because you never know exactly what's going to happen.
Yes, that's what I enjoy,
not
too.
only the element of they get possessed, and it doesn't always take the same amount of time to, like, take effect, so they're, like, choking for a bit, and they're, like, speaking in tongues, but then the camera, I think, sells the moment of possession really well, of rotating 90 degrees as their heads is thrown back and, like, their eyes turn black. That is really cool, and then also it's hit or miss, but I think in a good and, like, a varied way in terms of what are you going to see? Are you going to see the soul of the person that they're communing with? Is that going to be someone they know? Is it going to be someone totally random? Is it going to be someone that just looks old or, like, looks like they're falling apart and, like, with really good makeup effects? How is that? How are they going to react? What are they going to be saying? How are the other people around them going to react? Is it going to go too far? I love that being sort of ambiguous and not quite knowing what's going to happen next. But I think that pairs very nicely with the consistency of the rules of this hand and the drug use and stuff. Explaining that you hold the hand you light the candle, that opens the door, you have 90 seconds to do this, or it goes too far, and then they leave, and you have to blow the candle out and pull the hand off, and that consistency of those rules, like, instantly made me feel like I was a part of this group, and, like, trying to test how far we can go, and, like...
That's what I was getting at as well, is that I love just this conceit of, this is a modern setting, and... A lot of times there's this conversation around, do smartphones, like, ruin movies nowadays? Like, is tension removed from horror movies or just movies in general by the presence of smartphones? And this is a really cool use of it, in that it like, builds this urban legend that, we all obsessed with in high school of, like, did you hear about this thing that happened in the town over or something like that? And having those videos of, like, making the thing, like, where people are sharing them and people are like, oh, no, this is fake. Everyone's faking it, yada, yada, yada. It's just a really cool element to build out this concept. And yes, Tucker, to make the audience member feel like they are ingrained in this, it's also just... I just love all of our characters here in this, like, core group are just really fun. They're charismatic. They're great actors. Very great. Great time. First time out for a lot of these people too.
Yeah, and I also do want to talk about the horror element of this. Of course, we've been talking about this sort of in generalities, but I think that the gore that this movie has and tension that leads up to moments of gore and violence is really, really impressive. Some incredibly impressive makeup work. Of course, we're talking about the acting, sort of selling those possession moments. But it is that gore and the lengths to which they go to show that this possession is no joke, and people are going to die, and you're going to see blood spurting, and you're going to see blood and cracks in places that should not have blood and cracks. And I really like that they... I mean, I was more uncomfortable here than I think almost any horror movie I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, because a lot of it does revolve around, like, actual physical bodily violence after these people have been possessed, particularly when it comes to the character of Riley in any key sequence.
Well, there's also the beginning, which I think sells the violence really well, in which a possessed guy at a party stabs his brother out of nowhere in a really shocking moment, and then stabs himself in the head, and you're like, I can't believe I just saw that.
There's a lot of that. There's not as much, like, creature figure lurking in the shadows. There's moments, of course, but it's not entirely reliant around that. Where our friend, after we got out of the theater, said, who is not as hot in this movie, said, "I'm so glad that A24 made Hereditary again." And I love Hereditary. Don't get me wrong, but I think that movie is much more like figure in the shadows. Did you catch that? Sort of. What did I really just see that, or more imagining stuff? Where this is literally like, people are bashing their heads into tables and walls and trying to pull their own eyes out and stabbing themselves it's a lot of that. And then the lasting makeup effects of seeing those injuries and is really, really brutal. Up through the end of this movie too.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, and I think the ending is where I think the movie loses me a little bit. Because I was talking about the consistency of the rules at base level, the sort of urban legend element of it, sharing it between people. That is consistent, it makes sense, it's easy to understand, and it provides a really compelling end to, we know how this horror thing works, which is interesting because horror stuff is usually hard to understand, and it's kind of like outside of the realm of our... what we're able to comprehend, but is very comprehensible to this hand. But I think where I, as a guy that really appreciates the consistency of the rules of this movie, lose a little bit of interest is when the spirits start talking, and are they possessing other people or creating versions of other people, or is our main characters imagining this, and then... Spoilers, I guess, but Riley's soul is being tortured by spirits, but who are these spirits, and why are they mad, and is that related to Mia's mother, and is Mia's mother really there? Like, there's a lot of questions that I feel like aren't as clear as what makes this movie so compelling to me is being a comprehensible horror movie, and then just throws a bunch of horror ideas, like spirits and possession in, like, uncorporeal ways, that by the end I'm like, I don't actually know what happened here, especially in that third act.
I feel I'm much more lenient when it comes to that sort of thing in movies than you are. I'm much more like, I don't need to like be able to write down on paper point by point what actually happened in the world of the film if it is compelling enough filmically for an audience experience. And I felt that the ending was.
Sure.
I think it doesn't really. I do see your point of like, was Mia's mom ever really there? But I can also see explanations of like, it was. I mean, she's like a corrupted spirit on the other side now, and she just wants Mia to be on that other side with her. Which, again, I guess we're doing spoilers. She does.
Yeah.
Mia dies at the end of this, which I also like because I was drawing comparisons in my mind between this and a previous horror film this year called The Boogeyman, which we didn't review actually.
No.
But
that's
okay.
fine.
Which does end, which has like a good-ish ending. There's like a question mark of like, is it actually all gonna be okay? But this has a like very blatantly just like Mia fucking dies and is in the spirit world now.
And I like that as a continuation of this cycle. It doesn't end on happy roses and they destroy the hand and no one's gonna get touched by this again. I do like the horror movies that are able to say like, this was an event that happened in like the history of this legend ostensibly, and we witnessed it, but it's not stopping. And this hand is in like Spain or something now, and like it was very interesting to see that they ended on a note of, this is just part of the cycle, and I actually like that.
But I also see your point of like the ending is a little bit confusing because like she's walking through the hospital as a spirit now, and like she looks into a room and she sees Riley, and he's like normal now, like he doesn't look beat up at all, which I just interpreted to be like he's it's a figment of her imagination. Like like Riley might still be fucked up and maybe even dead now. I think it's largely just like she's seeing all the people in her life literally like walk away from her, her friends, her like her dad, and exits that elevator as well, because she is no longer in that world anymore. I think it's literally like seeing the people that she loves leave her or not be able to contact them anymore. And then I just dig the ending of of she's on the other side of the hand now, and then I let you in, hard cut to credits.
Yeah, that's so good.
Dig
so
that.
Good. Any final things or areas of this movie that you want to focus in on before we give our final scores?
Sound design. I want to say the sound design is really, really good. I mean, there's obviously the big stuff of like big sound for a jump scare or something like that, but with just like this squelching and a banging, and there's also a repeated motif of like nails like scratching on wood. Just great sound design in this film. Yeah, no, that's definitely true, and I think that also extends to how it's balanced with a very unique score or a soundtrack that uses a lot of hip hop and rap, and like that is a very different style to put over horror scenes, but it works very well for the tone this movie is going for, being very modern, very fresh in that regard, and incorporating, as you said, elements of modern culture into horror, and showing that no, it's not just haunted houses and like an abandoned or haunted mansions. We'll get there. That review's coming soon. That can be scary. There is horror to be found in the tension of modern teenage life and parties and drug culture and all of that, and for that this movie really, really sold itself as something special to me, and I'm excited to see what they do next. I hope that Street Fighter's awesome. I like Street Fighter in general, and so it'd be really cool to have a great Street Fighter movie, but I'd like to see them I think you mean another great Street Fighter movie.
A third one, Tanner.
A third one, actually, yeah.
Tanner, why don't you give me your final score for this movie?
7.5 out of 10.
7.5? I think I'm going to go a little hotter, even though I had a little bit of issues with it being kind of ambiguous by the ending. That is kind of an issue that I draw with a lot of horror movies, so it's like something new for me. Like, this doesn't like kneecap it completely, but I'm going to go at 8.2 out of 10. I think this was really something special, and I think it's my favorite horror movie this year.
I think so too.
Not that there's much competition. I mean, you've gotten some like more art horror movies in like Knock at the Cabin, Infinity Pool, but
yeah. I take
Evil
that
Dead
back.
Rise and Scream 6 were also both very good, and Megan was good. But...
I do have to retract that statement because my favorite horror movie of the year is Skinamarink, but that is the exact opposite for you.
That's my least favorite movie of the entire year. Which we didn't review. But thank you very much, everyone, for joining us for this review of Talk to Me. Of course, talk to us in the comments, in the Discord.
We let you in.